today we have Joshua Brightheart, and he's our Senior VP for the ConnectALL. And this is the broadband program that also falls under the auspices of ESD. And we have asked Joshua to give us a presentation of what actually ESD's role is in this program and what are we doing to address especially parts of the state that need to improve that infrastructure. So everybody could be connected. So Joshua, thank you very much, and I'll hand the floor over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to the President. So I'm going to give an overview of the program, the federal programs, state and federal programs, and update you on three key recent actions that give you a sense of what we've done to date. And what will be ahead. First, just to introduce myself again, Joshua Breitbart. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. My entire professional life has been focused on expanding access to the tools of communication, with a real dedication to the people of New York. Helped start two nonprofit organizations that have both been thriving for 20 years. A decade ago, I worked on the Obama-era Broadband Technology Opportunities Program projects in multiple communities. In 2015, I entered public service working for the City of New York, working on broadband strategy there. After I left that public service, I had the opportunity to advise Darren Walker in his role as the co-chair of the Broadband Subcommittee of the Reimagine New York Commission. And that's also just a way of saying that when I saw Governor Hochul's ConnectALL agenda, I was incredibly inspired by the comprehensiveness and the vision that she brought to this, that entire government has brought to this. And so these are the key programs that the governor announced. ConnectALL programs for municipal infrastructure and assistance, affordable housing connectivity, a statewide digital equity plan and grant program, a rural broadband program, and a connectivity innovation program, in addition to a suite of initiatives to facilitate broadband deployment and adoption. And again, this is just a truly comprehensive suite of programs that give us the tools to address this multifaceted and entrenched challenge, whether it's a combination of infrastructure, social challenges, business challenges. It's just wonderful to see the comprehensiveness. Now, every state is developing a broadband office at this point, or has developed one. But I think the ambition and vision that Governor Hochul has brought to this is real leadership. And again, as somebody who's been working on this for a long time, this was truly inspiring, and I'm greatly appreciative of the opportunity that President Knight has given me to lead this office. The authorizing legislation, one of the key strengths is that we have the full endorsement from the legislature. Codifying and solidifying these programs, and really, announcing a clear role for both the public and private sector in getting this done, and including forming the Broadband Access Advisory Committee, which has public and industry and labor representation on it. And I think one of the things you see across the governor's announcement and the legislature's codification of it and endorsement, and why it's so important to have it at Empire State Development, is because we really do have an opportunity not just to deliver service where it's needed and address those inequities and challenges throughout the state, but also to make broadband a thriving industry in New York with widespread equitable benefits and opportunities for consumers, workers, and businesses.
Hey Josh, do you mind questions in
No.
between? Because I'll probably forget by the time you get to the 30s. And that is, so in the past, there are multiple state agencies involved in the state's broadband efforts, and are they now all consolidated in the ESD, or do other state agencies still play a role, and are we the lead role?
Yes, we are the lead role. Other agencies absolutely play a critical role, and part of what the legislation makes clear is that this office is the coordinating and leading entity for those efforts. But there are important roles certainly for the Department of Public Service, which retains the regulatory mandate. New York Power Authority, which is authorized to make some of its fiber infrastructure available. DOT maintains its right-of-way and permitting function, and then on the social and engagement side, there are a number of social services focused agencies that we also work with closely, since outreach and support is a critical component as well.
Great, thank you very much.
So the governor announced that this was a more than $1 billion program. This is the what that is comprised of, which includes 5 separate federal grants coming out of 2 separate pieces of legislation. So the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program in the IIJA is focused on broadband deployment, and there's a planning grant as well as an implementation grant. It also includes the State Digital Equity Program, which again has a planning grant and a grant for capacity building and implementation. ARPA, the Rescue Plan Act, which has a Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund. That's an implementation grant of $345 million. And then there was a state allocation. And as we'll see, some of these funds we have ranges because the federal government is still determining the allocation. But we anticipate the total will be more than $1.1 billion based on what we understand today. So this is a timeline of those grant programs across the two acts, which were passed in 2021, and the key takeaways from this timeline certainly is the number of moving parts to it, as you can see, and the variety of deadlines. Some of which the ones that have come to pass, we've met, and we are moving forward with towards the next components. But also that we have not received any of these federal grants yet, and that's just consistent with the way the federal timeline and the federal agencies are working. So that's an important message that we've been sharing with our partners, that yes, it is a $1 billion plus program, but these federal grants are not in hand yet. And that, in many ways, we're in an early stage. There's a planning phase incorporated into those infrastructure programs, which makes great sense and gives us a great opportunity to assess the status and plan to implement these funds. But also, the other thing, excuse me, is that the funds do have expiration dates. And we have to move expeditiously because, frankly, given the size of the program, we have to turn money into broadband twice as fast as we've done in the past. And that's the challenge that we're rising to meet.
And do we have to actually apply for those funds, or is this sort of the check is in the mail, we're just waiting to receive it?
We have applied for 3 of the grants. The remaining grants, where you saw the ranges in terms of the Infrastructure Act funding and the digital equity funding, those allocations are to be determined and will be dispersed once we submit the plans that we'll be producing over the next 9 to 12 months.
Thank you.
And then lastly, just to note that if you look at today, we are in what I'm referring to as the FCC MAP challenge window, and we'll have more on that later, which I'll explain when we get to what our actions on that have been to date. So just want to now just transition to giving you an example of the work we've done to date, 3 of our key recent actions, and they'll give you a sense also of the breadth of expertise and and coordination involved in some of these projects. First one, announced in May, is a $10 million investment in 4 rural communities, pilot deployments with the New York Power Authority, leveraging their existing fiber infrastructure, partnering with regional fiber operators and private providers, and as well as local government, local electric utility, to deliver advanced internet service. You can see a testimonial following a town hall meeting in Nichols. And I think one of the things to take away from this is just what an incredible economic development tool these investments are, and this program is, because these are fairly hard to reach areas. If they don't have broadband service, obviously they're challenged in a variety of economic ways, but in terms of access to education, jobs, health services even. And we can deliver economic development in a very targeted way to relatively small towns and locations. And we've begun that, building that capability in partnership with local and other state agencies.
Hey, Josh, we live in downstate. A lot of us probably take for granted, that a lot of us have good broadband, and we complain if something's not downloading after 30 seconds,
right.
That it's too slow. But in terms of our target, I don't know if you have a slide on this, are most of the issues in the state, is this more of an upstate issues, or do we have significant pockets here downstate as well that need broadband services enhanced?
There are needs across the entire state, and that is, again, one of the benefits of this program, is that we have both the opportunity and obligation to deliver services across the state. As I showed at the beginning, the ConnectALL is this suite of tools, some of which addressing the education and affordability and adoption challenges, some of which are addressing the infrastructure or business challenges. And what we're going to be doing through the planning phase is identifying in each region and locality of the state what balance of those tools need to be brought to bear to address those challenges. But absolutely downstate, upstate, this again is just a wonderful opportunity, but also challenge of this program is that we are going to be delivering that support to absolutely every region of the state.
Great, terrific, thank you.
As an example of that, actually, it's a wonderful segue to talking about the affordability challenge. Also in the Infrastructure Act is an affordable connectivity program, which is a direct to consumer subsidy. And so in partnership with Department of Public Service and all those, what we're calling the Digital Equity Working Group, partners of various state agencies, our library systems throughout the state, a variety of local community partners, getting the word out about this program. So we've been able to reach the milestone of 1 million New York households, which is a fantastic number, but it's really also that we are doing well in terms of the overall percentage, but there's more work to be done, and the FCC recently opened an outreach program, and we're looking carefully at that and what we can do to continue to increase adoption of this, because the second million is harder than the first million, and that's the work that remains to be done, so we're continuing to move this effort along through a collaboration, but very proud that we reached this milestone. And just to point out the numbers here, the benefit is $30 a month for eligible households. So we're talking about more than $360 million a year, and that's money that people now have to spend on other essential services or spend as part of in our local economy. So this is a great return in that regard for New Yorkers. The third example, this is a bit more wonky, but this is also a critical function, is to understand how this is moving between the federal, various federal agencies and the states. So that's the way those allocations for the Infrastructure Act will be made will be in part based on maps that are being produced by the Federal Communications Commission, separate from the Commerce Department, which is administering the grant program. And the first step of that was to make available to states just the list of addresses and serviceable locations. Because of the Governor Hochul's leadership and the work of the Department of Public Service and our partners at the State GIS Office, we were prepared with the state broadband maps and able to quickly produce an analysis of that data and submit a challenge of over 31,000 records. I've heard similar discrepancies from other states, but I've yet to hear that any other state was able to actually meet the requirements of the challenge process to deliver that. So I'm very proud of that collaborative work and the preparation that went into that to submit that challenge. Beginning tomorrow, there will be a public map that will show what the FCC believes to be the level of service or lack of service across the country for every address. We'll obviously be assessing that compared to the data that the Department of Public Service has produced. But this challenge window is also going to be very much oriented towards consumers, and so we're going to be promoting that through our local partners to consumers and encouraging anybody who can to visit that website, and if you can't, to go to your local library to check that website and make sure that that your data is accurately presented, because that will have an impact on the amount of funding that is then available to the state to address the challenges. So that's really the phase that we're in terms of the data collection, the planning, having submitted those applications, and continuing to strengthen the agency partnerships, the local government partnerships, the industry partnerships, and community-based partnerships that will allow us to address these challenges. And just, thank you again, and I look forward to continuing to update the board as we begin to implement these programs and Governor Hochul's agenda.
Great. Well, Joshua, thank you very much. It's exciting, a lot of responsibility. I know Governor Hochul has given us and the legislature resources to carry out a lot of new duties that we're obligated to carry out. And are you beefing up the staff, and how's the hiring going? Is that going well?
It is, and I have to really thank all the team at ESD for moving that along. It's a great agency to be a part of, and all those resources have been brought to bear on the hiring process and the grant process. So that is moving along. We are adding that capacity. The federal grants include administrative resources. So we're moving that along, and excited to continue to grow the office.
Great. And I just have one last question, and that is, are we reaching out to the private sector as well, whether it's our friends from Spectrum or Verizon or Crown Castle? They have a lot of expertise as well, and are we picking their brains and getting their input into our planning efforts? Absolutely.
That process, that I've begun meetings with those stakeholders as well. We have obviously the large companies that have that expertise across much of the state. We also have a great collection of smaller companies in some of the various regions. Some companies that have been around for over 100 years. Some of them are still family owned. And we have begun and will continue to engage with all of those stakeholders. Certainly, the companies that you mentioned are front of mind for that effort.
Great. Well, that's terrific. We look forward to having you back, in the future to give us an update. But it sounds like you certainly have your hands full. And any of the other directors have any other questions for Joshua? Great. Well, very informative, and I hope the board, appreciates it. I know I just learned a whole lot, just like we did last time at the with the I Love New York, and perhaps you could get your slide deck to Debbie, and she could share it with the directors as well.
Absolutely happy to. Thank you again for the opportunity, Chair.
All right. Thank you, Joshua.